and I am your host and moderator for today's session on energy efficiency occupations. We have with us John Carrese and Laura Coleman, both from the Centers of Excellence of the California Community Colleges, and we're excited about their presentation. In a moment, they're going to share what they've learned about energy efficiency occupations. A few people couldn't hear our last webinar, so I want to start out with some information for those of you who might be watching but not listening. If you can hear my voice right now, you don't need this information, actually. Rather than repeat it, I'll just pause a minute so people who need to can read it. And I actually hope there's no one on right now who needs this slide. A few other logistical things. To minimize background noise, because we have so many participants on the call, your phone line is muted, and as we call on you, we'll unmute you. Also, if you haven't logged in with your audio PIN, we'll send you a reminder later in the presentation before the question and answer period. And if you don't log in, we won't be able to unmute you at all, so if you do want to participate in the discussion, we need you to enter that audio PIN. As with all the other audio or technical problems, if you have difficulty with your audio PIN, you can let us know by raising your hand or sending us a question. We are recording this session, and we will make the recording available afterwards. So if you want to share this with anyone else, you can. We also hope to keep your undivided attention, but if you have to step away for a moment, don't worry. You'll be able to revisit the recording later. Okay, just a few more logistical matters. I mentioned that you can raise your hand to get our attention or ask a question, and here's how. Click the button with the picture of the hand on it, and if your hand goes up, we'll call you at the next break in the action. If you decide you don't want to keep your hand up, your question's already been answered, you can always click that button again to lower it. You can also send us questions using the questions pane of the control panel. There will be a question and answer period after the main presentation. So if we don't get to your question before we run out of time, we will email you an answer afterwards. So there won't be any unanswered questions. If you happen to lose your questions pane, you can get it back by clicking on the View menu up at the top of the control panel. And last, to minimize the control panel, to get it out of the way, there is a button for that too. Okay. So if we could all see each other, if we weren't meeting virtually but actually in person, we wouldn't need this slide. But since we're not in the same room, here's a list of those who signed up for the webinar. And this is the first of 2 pages. We had over 80 registrants, and if you registered before today, your name should appear. I think it's just a sign of how much interest there is in this area. This is the second page. One of the things I find encouraging about green jobs, even as I am making sense of the concept for myself, is the way that it's bringing together so many different kinds of organizations and people with different interests, merging in the area of a new economy. So you'll see that we have community colleges, state agencies such as Michigan and Maryland, thank you for joining, advocacy groups like the Workforce Alliance, Apollo Alliance, National Council of La Raza, who want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate in this new economy, and other types of organizations. So it's exciting to have you all in our session. Okay, well, we'll have a quick poll just to get a sense of who is actually in the room. And we'll give you a few seconds to describe what type of organization you represent. we'll get a sense from this of the diversity of perspectives. I think you all should have voted by now. I'll give you a few more seconds. So there is quite a range. What's interesting is actually a third of you are public workforce or other government agencies. And I know that there's a lot of interest both at the local and the state level in developing strategies to meet the needs of this workforce, both to help people get good jobs and to help develop the economy as an economic development. So that's interesting. Just a few words about the Insight Center. It's our parent organization of the National Network of Sector Partners. Community economic development is part of our name, and it's our mission. And some of our other initiatives focus on closing the racial wealth gap, developing inclusive business, and documenting the economic power of early care and education. And for more information, you can go to this website. The National Network of Sector Partners, our mission is to promote and increase support for sector initiatives, and we were one of the first organizations to develop and articulate the sector initiative concept. We will have a national conference devoted to this topic in Washington, D.C. at a time when it's especially exciting to be in D.C., I think. So I hope that many of you will consider joining us. We're also a membership organization. We have more than 350 members who receive email updates, webinars, and other services. So if you find this webinar of value, I encourage you to consider becoming a member. And you can find more information here. I'd like to take one more poll before we start to learn what your interests are in learning about from today's session, so that maybe we can help focus what we talk about. So what are you most interested in learning about energy efficiency occupations? We'll address all these topics, but it will be helpful to know where the major interest lies. Okay, we'll show you what you've said so far. So there's a wide range, but particularly interested in existing training models, which I think there is a lot of activity in the Bay region of the California community colleges that our presenters can reference. And some of you may be participating from those colleges. If you have the opportunity to share information about what you're doing, we'd love to hear that. Just raise your hands and we'll call on you at the appropriate time. Before we get to our presenters, there was one more comment I wanted to make, which was, why now? And you may have noticed a recent training and employment notice from the Department of Labor's Employment and Training and Administration. It's the announcement of the overall guidelines for the competitive grants for green job training that are funded by the Recovery Act. I don't have the link handy, but I encourage you to look at that because it's going to be there's going to be funding available, and hopefully the information that you get from today's session will inform what you end up proposing and doing. Okay, without further ado, we do have two great presenters, and since I'm sure you're at least as eager to hear what they have to say as I am to turn it over to them, I will let them take it from here.
Good morning. Thanks, Jim. I'm John Carrese, the director of the San Francisco Bay Region Center of Excellence. And Laura, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Of course. Good morning. My name is Laura Coleman. I'm the project director for the Northern California Centers of Excellence.
Okay, great. So we want to thank Jim, the Insight Center, and the National Network of Sector Partners for giving us the opportunity to present this morning. And in a second, we'll give you, okay, here we are. We'll be talking to you this morning about workforce trends and needs in the energy efficiency sector. And you can go to the next slide. What I'd like to do is just give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover in today's presentation. We'll give you a little bit of background on the Centers of Excellence. We're funded through the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. We'll talk about our research. We'll talk about the key findings and the big news that we feel we discovered in our survey to employers in the Bay region that hire energy efficiency workers. There's going to be thousands of new jobs created in the energy efficiency sector over the next few years, and we'll tell you about that survey and how we got those results. We'll talk about the college, community college programs in the Bay Area that we surveyed all colleges to try and find out what they currently have and what we might be able to build to respond to industry's needs. And then we'll go on and talk about our efforts in California with our other regional centers of excellence across the state. There's one in each area of the state, and we're going to be studying energy efficiency in all the remaining areas of California. And then hopefully we'll have some time for question and answers. So next slide. So the Centers of Excellence, as I said, funded through the California Community College Chancellor's Office. There are 10 centers across the state, one in each economic region. In partnership with business and industry, we deliver regional workforce research customized particularly for community colleges to help them with decision-making, resource development, and hopefully our reports help with the real-time data they need to do new program development or modifying programs to meet current labor market needs. Often we do primary research, surveying employers to get data on their workforce needs in real time. As I said, often our employment development department doesn't have data on these emerging jobs and industries we're studying. And our reports and research are validated by industry. I think that's an important part. We're always working with industry to make sure that what we're writing about to our colleges and other stakeholders is validated from an industry point of view. So next slide. So this is just a map of California and the 10 centers of excellence across the state. As I said, kind of the Chancellor's Office has carved up the state in different economic regions, and there's one center in each region doing these labor market reports and environmental scanning work to help our colleges respond to industry. Next slide. So I want to quickly tell you about our research objectives on this energy efficiency study. Our goal was really getting enough data from industry and our colleges to conduct a gap analysis. So answering the question, are community colleges providing the energy efficiency workers that the industry needs? And are the colleges in our area expanding and creating the new energy-related courses and programs that are going to be needed to meet that demand? So we started by identifying and then surveying the firms in the Bay Area that hire energy efficiency workers in technical occupations. We were mostly looking for the jobs that are kind of entry and mid-level jobs, middle-skill jobs, so not someone that would be requiring a BA or a PhD, but more of the technical level jobs you could get at a community college through a certificate or associate degree. We wanted to project job growth for these occupations, this cluster of 8 occupations we studied, and we wanted to ask employers about their workforce needs and challenges so we could better respond to them. And finally, as I said, we surveyed our colleges in the area. There are 26 colleges in the San Francisco Bay Area. We wanted to find out what programs they had that related to energy efficiency occupations, and as I said, what gaps there might be where we didn't have the programs needed to respond to what employers were telling us they needed. Okay, next slide. So here is how we define the energy efficiency sector for our region. There are different ways to define energy efficiency. We took a relatively broad approach of how we defined it. We looked at 3 big kind of sectors or industry segments: public or private utilities or agencies, businesses that are doing building, design, and construction, and then finally firms that are in the building or facility operations and maintenance industry or sector. So those 3 industry groups or segments together kind of defined how we began to search for the employers that we would then survey. So next slide. So here's a little bit about how we approached the study. Laura will talk more about the occupations that flow out of those 3 big industry groups I talked about. But before we get there, I want to just give you a little bit of background on how we did the study. We did a lot of reading, extensive literature reviews, a lot of great research out there on energy efficiency as it relates to workforce issues. Those resources and reports are outlined in our full report, which you can get online, and we'll show you how to do that at the end of the presentation. So we built databases of firms in the energy efficiency sector based on how I just defined it, public or private utilities or agencies, building design and construction, and building or facility operations and maintenance. We used public databases, we did online research to find firms that self-identified as energy efficiency firms, and essentially worked with our industry partners to build those databases, which we would then use to go out and push our survey out to employers. Once we got our tool together, survey tool together, and we began to get the survey out to regional employers, we were, again, working very closely with our industry partners and employers. The big utility in our region is PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. They were sending the survey out on our behalf to their businesses and contractors that do energy efficiency work, as were all the other industry partners that we worked with. And I'll show you a list of those partners in a slide or two. So we got all the data. We did this survey in about January of this year, of 2009. We got over 700 responses, which was a huge response for us, the biggest response we've ever gotten in a labor market research project that we've done in the Bay Area. We extrapolated that survey data to a population of firms that we identified in our database. We estimate that number of firms in the energy efficiency sector for the Bay Area to be about 3,800. So we took our survey data, extrapolated it to the population of 3,800 firms, and came up with the projections that you'll see in this presentation and in the full report. All along the way, we were working with industry to create our tool, our survey tool, to kind of make sure we were on target with how we were approaching the research. So next slide. So here's the list of research and industry partners that we worked with to do this primary research. We first, in scoping the project, worked with these 4 research partners you see at the top of the slide. Laney College is a college in our area in Oakland that's really a lead college on creating energy efficiency training programs. They have a National Science Foundation grant to look at commercial HVAC and energy efficiency training programs. They were a very big help in scoping out the study, as was the Environmental Training Centers in California. They're another program funded through the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. They focus on environmental issues and energy efficiency and conservation. The Lawrence Berkeley National Lab was a great partner to us. They are doing national research on energy efficiency workforce needs, and so they helped us scope out our study and kind of stay on target with what the key questions are that we should be asking to employers. And then BW Research Partnership is a research firm that we've used for many of our studies to help us go out there and actually collect the data in online surveys and phone surveys, and they're very skilled, and we couldn't do the actual mechanics of the research without them. So the industry partners we worked with, you can see listed here. I won't go through all of them. Their logos pretty much say who they are. I do want to point out a few. PG&E, as I said, the main utility in our area, is tremendously helpful. Most of the survey responses we got were from them using their database of employers that they work with in the region, and we got a huge response from the PG&E partners pushing the survey out. We tried to work with partners in each of the three big industry sectors I talked about. So we had some utility. We had a utility. We had building design and construction firms through our partnership with the U.S. Green Building Council, and also building performance contractors through the CBPCA. And then the two BOMA groups, Building Owners and Managers Association in our region, were very helpful in getting the survey out to facility, building or facility operators and maintenance employers, as was the IFMA, that's the International Facility Management Association. So that's, I think that's my segment for now. Laura is going to talk to you more about the occupations we studied and take it from here. So Laura?
Thank you, John. Good morning, everyone. My part of the presentation will cover our key findings for the study, starting with what occupations did we study, which, according to the poll earlier, everyone's really interested in. So this list here is showing you the 8 occupations that we studied. They have multiple titles, most of them. That's just our way of including the titles that are most recognized by employers. They're grouped in 3 groups. Basically, they're matched to the employer group, as John mentioned before, that they are most likely to be employed by. That's not to say that you wouldn't find some of these occupations employed in the other groups, but the majority are going to be employed by these groups. So compliance analyst, most likely employed by public or private utilities or agencies, and so on. The other 7 occupations, resource conservation, energy auditor, also known as home energy rater, construction or design project manager, building performance or retrofit specialist, HVAC technician, building control systems technician, and building operator or engineer. And again, they're grouped according to their major employers. Next slide. We asked employers to estimate what their employment level would be in the next 12 months. So in the next 12 months, our survey respondents indicated that the growth could result in as many as 3,470 new jobs for the Bay Area economy. That's a 12-county Bay region. And within that, 950 estimated new jobs for building performance or retrofit specialists, 590 new positions for energy auditors or home energy raters. This was the short-term or near-term growth estimate. We also asked them to look at 3 years and tell us where their staffing might be in 3 years. Next slide, please. In 3 years, the combined estimate could be as many as 13,000 new jobs. That includes 2,800 plus jobs for construction design project managers and almost 2,700 jobs for building performance or retrofit specialists. These two occupations had the highest growth for that period, which is why they're mentioned. Next slide, please. When we went out to employers to survey them, we asked them to rate the difficulty they experience in finding qualified applicants to fill these positions. So what this is showing you in this chart is several things. One, the size of the bubble represents the current employment as compared to the other 7 occupations. So that's the relative size of employment. The vertical axis is showing the 3-year growth, and it starts at 10% because all of the occupations for 3-year growth were projected to grow more than 10%. The horizontal axis is charting the difficulty hiring, the level of difficulty that employers indicated. And this axis starts at 50% because more than 50% of employers rated all occupations at over 50% difficulty hiring. So, for example, using Bubble 8, building control systems technicians, you can see that the current employment of that bubble is smaller than, say, Bubble 3 project managers. So it's a much smaller employment group, but they have a projected growth of more than 40%, and employers find it extremely difficult. Close to 80% found it really difficult to hire this occupation. Next slide. The wage data collected from employers revealed that these occupations, when employed in these sectors, pay very well. For example, just to give you the low and the high, HVAC technicians and installers could earn a median entry-level wage of $41,600. The median experienced wage reported was $72,800. At the high level, construction project managers could earn as much as $60,000 at the entry level, and a median wage for experienced level was at $90,000. The other 6 occupations fell within those 2 ranges. Next slide. When asked about education preferences, employers revealed that for resource conservation, energy efficiency manager, compliance analyst, construction design project manager, at least 45%, actually more than 45% of our employers preferred that these applicants come to them with some sort of bachelor's degree in a related field or a specific bachelor's degree. Next slide. Thank you. 1 out of 3 employers prefer applicants for energy auditor, HVAC technician, and building control systems technician to have a specific associate degree related to that occupation or a program certificate related to that occupation. So great interest from employers in targeted education for these occupations. Next slide. We also asked employers, what are the most important knowledge and skill areas these workers need to have? And across the board, ability to communicate with customers in writing and in person was off the charts important to our employers. So almost 100% of our employers said that this ability was key to performing these occupations. Next. Understanding local and state energy efficiency requirements and incentives for new and existing buildings was the 2nd highest rated skill or knowledge area, and this is of course specific to these occupations. Next. General understanding of the mechanics and engineering of the energy systems, including HVAC, lighting, and renewable energy systems, was the third highest rated skill or knowledge area, and this is also specific to these occupations. Next slide, please. We asked employers to indicate what their level of interest would be in different community college training and education programs. The three highest interest options were in student internship programs, where 76% of our employers said they had some interest. Of those, 27% had great interest. On-site customized training for current employees was at 61% interest. And a certificate program in energy auditing and retrofitting also matched that interest, with 61% interest from employers and 25% great interest. So those are the key findings from our employer survey. And now I'm going to turn it back to John, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the college response.
Great. Thanks, Laura. So as I think I said earlier, our environmental scan reports really have two main components. We want to understand what the need is from industry, whatever industry we're studying, often, drilling down to the occupational level, as you've just seen. But we also need to understand, what do our colleges in our region, there are 26, what do they have currently to respond to that need? So we're trying to do a kind of a gap analysis. What's the demand from the employer side, and what can we supply in terms of trained students and workers to meet that need? We have to then go out and survey our colleges just like we survey our employers. And when we did the college survey, we looked at all 26 colleges, tried to understand what they currently are doing to address the education and training occupations we were studying. And we also asked them what they plan to do related to these 8 occupations in the future if they had something in the works, and rolled all that up. And that's in the findings that I'll give it to you at a high level today on the presentation. But in the report, the full report, there's a very detailed appendix that tells you the findings for all of the colleges that responded. So one other note to be included as a college that we reported on in the study, we wanted to only include college programs that related to the 8 occupations we were studying. So we didn't include, for example, renewable energy programs at a college like solar or wind, because that's really on the renewable energy generation side of the equation. We were just looking at the energy efficiency side of the market and wanted to report on what colleges have in that area. So we found that 13 of our 26 Bay Area colleges, exactly half, had courses or programs or degrees that were related to these 8 occupations. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we found there in that survey. Next slide. So half had programs, and again, I'm not going to be able to detail what every college has. That's in the full report. But really what we were focusing on is looking at what people already had, how could we respond to what this pretty significant employer survey data showed us in terms of the growth in jobs. And the main finding I think we wanted to share with you is that, at least for the Bay Area colleges, there currently were no programs for these 3 occupations that you see at the first bullet: energy auditor, home energy rater, compliance analyst or energy regulation specialist, or resource conservation or energy efficiency manager. So no colleges currently were preparing students to go out and work in those occupations. So there's a huge opportunity for our colleges to begin to think about building those courses and programs to be able to meet the need of what employers were saying they have, the hiring potential over the next 3 years and beyond. So the other job that's really growing quite rapidly is building performance retrofitting specialist. Currently, only one college in the region had a program related to that. There was another college that had one that was being planned, but a lot of opportunities for colleges to prepare students for that occupation as well. So really half of the 8 occupations really have tremendous opportunity for colleges to respond to meet industry needs. We were doing pretty well on the other occupations, such as HVAC, for example. Many of our colleges have HVAC mechanic and technician programs, or construction management programs, for example. There's, as I said, a lot of room for us to grow and to meet the need that's been documented by employers. Okay, next slide. So responding to industry, I mean, that's really the whole point of our reports. We're trying to create a kind of a roadmap for our colleges to help them know what to do next, to try and respond to what industry needs. So we called out 3 big recommendations for our colleges in the report. First of all, building the pipeline of skilled workers. For example, in the utility sector, for PG&E, many of their employees are retirement eligible over the next 5 years. Up to 40 or 50% of their employees are eligible to retire. It's a huge need to replace those workers. And at the same time, you've got new emerging jobs in, as I just said, energy auditing, building retrofitting. And so the new job growth will fuel a need for new workers in those occupations. So we've got to do a number of things. Some of the things we talk about are beginning to build partnerships with high schools to get students excited about going into these energy efficiency jobs. And then obviously we need to have them be able to come to a program at a community college, so we've got to build those programs if they don't exist. We've got some model programs. I mentioned Laney College. It's got a National Science Foundation grant. It's developed a lot of great courses and are building new ones. But we've got room to grow, clearly, to build that pipeline. So the second bullet, create and expand industry partnerships. I think Jennifer Oliver, who's my co-author on this report, who is the director of the Center of Excellence in the San Jose region, and I worked very hard, along with Laura, to build industry partnerships, as you saw on that one slide. I think our colleges really have an opportunity to expand on those, working with these industry associations and employers to bring them into the curriculum and program development process through industry advisory committees and through internships to help the colleges be able to really make sure they're training to what these jobs require, what employers are looking for. And our colleges really can take advantage of these initial partnerships we built to expand on them and make them kind of grow deeper and richer. Third, we're going to need to do a lot of work to provide professional development opportunities for faculty. So we've got something very exciting in the Bay Area that we've created over the last couple of years called the New Energy Workforce Initiative. This is a regional, could you just go back to that previous slide? Last bullet? Yeah. This is a regional effort to get community colleges talking to each other, cooperating with each other, and providing kind of forums. We call them energy faculty forums, where lead colleges or model colleges can present their programs. We also have industry partners coming and talking to us about what they're looking for and kind of certification standards and industry skills standards. And these ongoing events create the opportunity for professional development for our faculty, which will provide them with the opportunities for building relevant programs as we move forward. So next slide. So I think, Laura, you're going to pick up from here and take it to the slide. Okay.
So additional research. John mentioned earlier in the presentation that we are continuing this study with the rest of our centers throughout the state, and we've been collecting regional data for a couple months now, so replicating this study for the different economic regions, and should be producing similar reports over the summer as they flow out. So I think at last count we were getting close to a total of 2,000 California employers that will have been surveyed on the same survey. So this information should be available at a statewide level as well as regional. Over the summer, we will flow these reports out on our website. The other additional research project in the works is a follow-up study with Lawrence Berkeley National Labs, one of the research partners that John talked about earlier, and that John will be partnering with Lawrence Berkeley to produce a more detailed additional report on energy efficiency, taking the data set that we've created and looking at the individual industry sectors and the types of needs that they expressed in answering our questions, and also incorporating Lawrence Berkeley's national research on the topic. So looking forward to hearing from John and his partners at Lawrence Berkeley on that. Next slide. As John has mentioned, our full report has a lot more detail on these occupations and on our study results. You can find this report online at coeccc.net/energy. We've created a web page just for our energy efficiency study, and this is also where we'll host our statewide and regional results as we get them. One note on our website is that to download a report such as the Energy Efficiency Bay Region Scan, you do have to register as a user. It's, of course, free, just one of those pesky little steps to get access to our reports. So if you do download the report, just keep that in mind. Next slide. So I want to thank you for hanging in there with us to hear about our energy efficiency results. And these are our contact information. And please let us know if you have any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We'll go now to questions. But just to run through quickly, I'm already getting folks raising your hands. If you have a question, please do raise your hand or send me a question through the question pane. And this is just a little refresher. So I think we'll start with the first person who sent a question. It's Mary Penetrante, and Mary, hold on. I'm going to unmute you. Let's see. Mary, can you
Yes,
speak?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Do you want to ask a
Hi.
question?
Yes, good morning. So I did ask this question before you went through the last slide, and my question was, were there any existing research going on in Southern California, especially one focused in preparing like a preparatory education and training course at a high school level?
Well, I'll just go ahead, John, if you want. We are replicating the study in Southern California, so hopefully we'll have results for several regions in the Southern California area. Our focus is community colleges, and so most of our education component in our research reports does target what's available at the community college in those regions. However, I do know that the community colleges are quite aggressive about reaching out to high schools to create that pipeline of students. So I would think the programs that are in place or being developed at the community colleges, those program deans should have ideas as to how they're going to incorporate the high schools in creating a pipeline. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We'll call now on, actually it looks like Bernard Reynolds, you've unraised your hand. Did you have your question answered?
Well, yeah, I think so, but I also put in 3 text questions.
Okay.
But I do have a new question, and going back to the skills required, and there may be more data in your published report, but it looked to me like those were like the bottom of the competency pyramids on DOL as far as the skills were identified. Were there any higher level skills that might be considered new green required skills? We get a lot of questions about does a HVAC technician need to know anything more than what they've always been taught, and what would be that technical skill above what's currently taught? Did you get into that at all?
Yeah, I think that I'll take that one, Laura, just to start. There's an extensive section of the report where we actually ask about skills, 6 or 7 skills in each of these major industry segments that we talk about, and so we do get to a little deeper level on skills. What you saw were the kind of very high-level skills where everybody across the board in all the industry segments said that they were very much interested in those workers having those skills. So we do drill down a little bit more by industry sector. The report will give you that, but it's not going to be probably at the fine level of detail you might be looking for. We can't go on in too much detail on the survey about fine level skills. We do have occupational profiles in the report for each of these 8 occupations, which do a little bit of that. But I do think your point is well taken. I think generally what I've been learning is that these are a lot of these jobs are jobs that are really, let's just take the HVAC technician. They're maybe 80% of the way there. What makes it a green job if they're going in right now and trying to do that in kind of a building as an installer or maintaining a system? It may be that they're working with new technologies. And if you look at HVAC technicians or these building control systems technicians, it may be that they need to understand more about software, how these systems are networked together in a building environment to create a optimal performance for the energy use in the building and the equipment that's being installed. So the technology is changing both in terms of the actual equipment being installed and also how it's being networked together with computers. So that's an example kind of on HVAC. Building retrofitters, they're construction workers really, but they're using different materials. There are some technologies they need to understand and use. Well, an auditor would need to use like a infrared camera or a blower door test machine, I guess. So things like that are going to be different, and maybe that layer on top of the traditional job that makes it a green job.
Is that helpful to you, Bernard?
Yeah, it is. I would like to point out, though, that the ETA, when it's trying to reclassify occupations using green, they claim that of existing occupations, about 57, which include electricians, plumbers, roofers, are going to have significant changes in the skill requirements. And so that word kind of makes me wonder, well, what would be that significant? And so the more we can explore that, I think the better it is for our gap analysis here in Maryland.
Okay, well, let's see. I suspect others may have related questions. So I'll give a few others a chance to ask, but thank you for that question. We'll go now to Kenneth Collins. I'm not sure whether we answered your question already, but let me unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Jim. How are you doing? This
Great.
is Ken.
Glad to have you with us.
Great. Yeah, this is very informative. I appreciate it. I'm in the high desert area of Los Angeles County, particularly Palmdale, Lancaster, and we have the, I guess, the opportunity where we are very close proximity to San Bernardino and southern Kern County. So my question is, number one, I guess, is the PowerPoint available for us to download and go over with other persons in our High Desert Initiative group?
Yeah, so let me answer this one. After the webinar, I will send I will send you a notice with a link to the PowerPoint, a link to the recording of this session, and a link to the underlying report. So you should get that all in a nice, neat package, if not today, early next week.
Yeah, the second part of my question was simply the two centers that are in Los Angeles County. Antelope Valley College is our single community college in the area, and the high desert area is, I guess, is very, as far as it meets requirements for sun, solar, and energy efficiency. So, where is the location of the two centers?
Laura, probably the best thing to do would be to go to our website and find the directors. Kevin Fleming's the director in the San Bernardino region, and Lisa Lewinberg and Audrey Riley are the directors in the LA region. But you could get all their contact information at our website. Is that right, Laura?
Correct. I think probably several directors. You mentioned Kern County as well. I believe that's part of our central region, Director Michelle Marquez, and again, North LA may also be covered, just sort of in, I don't want to call it the Bermuda Triangle of California, but in relationship to the Center of Excellence directors, you could be possibly within the Central Coast, Central Valley, or LA region, and like you said, you're near San Bernardino as well. So your area is getting covered. Specifically, which director is responsible for your college, I can't tell right off the top of my head, but definitely our website should help that out. If not, you could email me directly, and I could figure that out for you.
So just to clarify with John and Laura, when you reference the website, is that the Centers of Excellence website and the Focus on Energy, or just the Centers of Excellence website? And I can
correct, just the Center of Excellence website, coecccc.net. There's a Contact Us link with the information for the centers.
Okay, that's great. Ken, thank you for those questions.
Great, thank you.
I know this is related to some of the discussion about specific jobs, but Janet Marinaccio of Goodwill has a question, and it may have to do also with the type of information about jobs that you have in your report or have access to. Janet, are you there, and is that a good characterization of your question?
Yes, yeah, I'm specifically looking for, what are the skill standards, what are the job descriptions? We hear a lot of terminology being thrown around about energy efficiency workers and so on, and a lot of us deal with people who have a variety of barriers to employment, related to education and, core competencies going in. And there's nothing defined right now that I can find out there on ONET or anything that gets into some of these specific competencies, unless you look at HVAC installers and so on. But will those be modified? What does anybody have that's written, and so on and so on?
Well, I'll start, and then Laura, you can definitely add to this. But as I said, it's page 41 of our full report. Occupational profiles go for each. There's one profile for each occupation that we studied, each of the 8. We try to do our best to piece together. As you said, it's ONET and Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics. These bodies don't have, for the emerging occupations in particular, great information around skill standards and what the job looks like and what the occupational outlook is. So we do our best, and Laura's been very, very helpful in putting together these occupational profiles for each of the occupations. So we will give you what we've been able to pull together. It's a starting point, I think, for the job, what its duties are, what the occupational outlook is, any career pathway potential that we've been able to, determine, and wage information from our survey. So that's our contribution. A lot more needs to be done, but it's, as I said, kind of a starting point from our research on what these, especially these emerging jobs look like and what the skill standards are. And as we already talked about in the presentation, we've given you some information about the educational level or requirements that employers are looking for these different jobs.
I think that's good information, John. I would also add that for trying to delve deeper into barriers to employment in these types of occupations, it might be, when we go out and survey employers, we have a limited number of minutes of their time that we can really take, and a lot of topics to cover. I would think for that kind of information, it would almost be more helpful to do a focus group of employers that are employing that specific occupation, that entry-level retrofit person or something along those lines, to have their attention in a group around a table or on a webinar, and ask them exactly their experiences and their needs in that way.
John, it sounds like doing a DACM process for some of these jobs to see how they differ from previous jobs. Is that something that you're aware of any of the community colleges in our area initiating?
Yeah, we have a couple of colleges, and I think the environmental training centers that we worked with are beginning to think about doing that, but plan on doing that to help us drill down even further. DACM is just really a process of developing a curriculum. The very first step of that is a job analysis, or really a occupational analysis to look at a job and do very similar to what Laura just said, a focus group with people that do that job and really analyze what are the duties and tasks that they do every day when they go to work. So yeah, we're planning on working on that, and we'll probably be doing that over the next year, and we'd be happy to share that with people as that unfolds. The other thing I wanted to mention quickly is the Environmental Defense Fund. There's a great report out that if you haven't seen it, might be helpful to you. The Green Jobs Guidebook is a great resource. It's just at www.edf.org/CA Green Jobs, altogether, CA for California, CA Green Jobs. And that guidebook profiles a lot of these occupations and many more, and gives some information about skills standards and salary ranges and certification requirements. It's another contribution to that effort.
Great. So Janet, thank you for your questions. I wanted to give one more person a chance because he touches on something that was raised but not addressed. That's Burke Murphy. I'll unmute you in a second, Burke, but it seemed like you had some questions about making these jobs accessible, particularly to people who might have adult basic education needs. Do you want to ask your question?
Hi, thank you. Well, I have asked 4 questions, but they are all related to strategic efforts to be inclusive at the community college level for underprepared and hard-to-serve workers. Now, I recognize from the last discussion that you are really targeting 8 mid-level occupations that are not necessarily for entry-level educated folks. But are you working with your adult basic education system to prepare people in a seamless entry into the credentialed community college program, and then working with the employers so that there might be seamless access and entry for hard-to-serve workers? Having lived in the Bay Area for quite some time, I know that Laney serves a lot of community that is not necessarily prepared and would need to have adult basic ed to get into a credentialed program. So is there a strategy for that?
That's a great question. I'll take a quick stab at that, Laura. I think that that's a lot of the hard work that's ahead. And it's a great point, and we're doing the research. We're not actually implementing the programs on the ground. Our colleges in the region are. I think they are bringing faculty together to discuss those exact issues. We do have a number of colleges in the region that do work closely with adult ed programs and regional occupation programs, as well as the workforce investment boards in their region, serving dislocated workers, to try and make our efforts as seamless as possible. But there's a lot of hard work to do to go ahead and do that well. And so we we're doing more and more all the time, and the stimulus dollars have brought more of us together to begin to do this work, I would say. That money has kind of brought us to the table to talk maybe a little bit more than we've been talking to each other before.
Well, I have to say that it's been an incentive in Minnesota to unsilo the various providers to bring people together, but everyone is sort of in a state of shock with the level of compression that they need to turn around and submit very competitive grants to train people for energy auditing, for instance.
Right.
So no magic bullets, huh?
That's the challenge. That's exactly the challenge. You've outlined it nicely.
Thank you.
So on that note, we're going to have to close this session. We are out of time. Thank you, Burke, for your question and that conversation. I have to apologize to Robert Cormia and Elizabeth Talbert and anyone else who's submitted a question we haven't gotten to yet. We will follow up with your questions by email or contacting you directly to make sure you get the information that you're looking for. A few dates to save. We will have another webinar, not on a green economy topic, but on from a grantee of the NNSP Strategic Venture Fund. So MDC of North Carolina will present about Latino pathways and sector strategies with immigrant workers. That'll be June 10th from 11 a.m. to noon Pacific. And once again, our national conference is in November. For those of you who are on Twitter, as I recently am, you can follow us on Twitter at the address there. And we do want to make sure that everyone gives their feedback on this session. This is how we're going to improve what we do. So after you close, you will be asked to complete a very short evaluation. Please tell us candidly what you thought about today's session, and thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Hey, Jim, this is John.
Yeah, John, let's hold on just a second. I'm going to stop.
Sure.